The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
It's Friday and the Prime Minister is still not worth the cost. We know that this summer Canada's economy actually shrank while the American economy grew by nearly 5%, all because of higher government spending, which leads to higher interest rates and higher inflation. Canadians are getting poorer, and no amount of rattling off statistics is going to change that fact. When will this government finally commit to balancing the budget and axing the tax so that Canadians can afford to eat, heat, and house themselves?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. While the Conservatives continue to talk down the Canadian economy, I'd like to take the opportunity to remind them about some of the key results of our economic plan so far. Madam Speaker, Canada is working because Canadians are working. Our GDP today is actually 4.1% above pre-pandemic levels. That's higher than Italy, higher than the European Union, higher than France, the UK, and Germany, Madam Speaker. And the IMF projects that Canada will have the highest economic growth in the G7 in 2024. Madam Speaker, I'd note that this is the same report that showed significantly upward revision in Canada's growth over the second quarter. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Madam Speaker, they can talk all they want, but the plan isn't working. We have never spent so much in this country to achieve so little. Government spending went up by more than 7%, and the economy still shrank by 1.1%. We have the lowest GDP per capita growth today and for the next 40 years of any advanced economy, according to their own budget. Canadians get higher taxes, higher spending, and more regulation. They are getting poorer. Why do they think that plan is working for Canadians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What the Conservatives don't realize is when they continue to talk down the Canadian economy, they're talking down Canadian workers, they're talking down Canadian innovators, and they're talking down Canadians who are working hard to build up our economy. And on this side of the House, Madam Speaker, we know that Canada's the best country in the world, and that's why I'm glad to share some more good news. Canada had the strongest growth in the G7 over the course of 2022, and the IMF predicts that we'll see the strongest average growth in the G7 in 2024. Madam Speaker, earlier this month, Moody's reiterated Canada's AAA rating, and that's not something that the Harper Conservatives could attest to back in their day. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Thornhill.
Madam Speaker, we're talking down the economic malpractice that is coming from that side. These numbers tell a very different story, and worse, they're actually even tied with those guys. Just yesterday, Madam Speaker, the First Nations leaders sued this government, claiming that the carbon tax unfairly punishes Indigenous communities. There is legislation in front of the Senate right now that will help Indigenous Canadians and all Canadians by taking the tax off of the farmers that grow the food so that Canadians can afford to buy the food. Why are the Liberals ordering their senators to block the bill that this House passed?
The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, it's still clear that the Conservative Party and its members don't really understand how Indigenous people are not Indigenous Canadians, but in fact they're Indigenous people of their own nations, Madam Speaker. The idea of self-determination is something that this Conservative Party just can't wrap their heads around. The colonial Conservatives just won't quit.